Professor Wendy Bacon. The reason why Wendy is so revered by her peers and students alike is because she has shown that journalism shouldn't be the mouthpiece of the powerful, that journalism should reveal abuses of power and strengthen the hand of those who seek social justice. Professor Wendy Bacon.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you to everyone who's come today to stand with Julian Assange. I know that some of you were there 10 years ago, just around the corner in Pitt Street, when we were protesting then against the vilification by the Australian government of Julian Assange and their refusal then to support them. We have to keep the pressure on. So many good points have been made already today. And I obviously don't want to repeat them. But I've been a journalist now for, I think it's 52 years, maybe just 50 years actually. And I can't think of any Australian journalist whose acts of journalism over that time I think are more worthy of my support. They're acts of journalism, accurate acts of journalism to reveal war crimes and They're acts of journalism which reveal war crimes and endless acts of abuse of power around the world in so many different countries. And perhaps the fact that Australians don't know more about all that is partly because, unfortunately, our media did not cover themselves in glory when these revelations were first made. But we can forget that now. What's important is that we do stand with Julian. And I stand today as a member of the Journalists Union, the Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance. And Mary has asked me to read a statement that the MEAA has sent for today. Julian has himself been a member of the MEAA since 2007. So he is a journalist, he's a member of the Journalists Union. So the MEAA acknowledges that we're meeting on the First Nations land that was stolen, never ceded, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Australia's Journalists Union, the MEAA, is proud to be associated with this event. We support Assange, not just because he's been a member of the union since 2007, but because his case poses a profound threat to press freedom for all journalists around the world. Since Julian was arrested, the MEAA has advocated to both the Australian and British governments to oppose his extradition to the United States. We arranged for a resolution to be passed at the Congress of the International Federation of Journalists, calling on the British government to resist Julian's extradition and to raise his case at the United States and the European Parliament. There are many journalists, I'll just add there are many journalists in other countries who are also standing with Julian. We've held meetings with Julian's lawyers and with WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, Christian Hrafson. For some, there is an ongoing debate about whether Julian's work constitutes journalism. But the fact remains that in 2010, WikiLeaks received a Walkley Award recognising its contribution to journalism. The Walkley judges said WikiLeaks had applied new technology to penetrate the inner workings of government, and Quentin has already explained some of that. Whether Julian is a journalist or not is beside the point, because the charges he faces are a direct assault on press freedom. Any journalist or publisher anywhere could be targeted by the US government if they publish anything it claims is secret. Journalism is not a crime, it's a public service vital to democracy. The public has a right to know what governments are doing in our name. Since 9/11, Australian governments have passed 75 laws, national security laws, impacting how journalists report on national security. Australia now has laws that can jail journalists for simply doing their job and whistleblowers for telling the truth. And we've seen plenty of that with the whistleblowers lately. 8 months ago, the Australian Federal Police raided the home of a reporter and the offices of the ABC. They were hunting for material to identify the journalist's confidential sources. Those journalists face criminal charges for reporting in the public interest. Fighting for press freedom is core business for our union. We defend press freedom whenever and wherever it is under attack. So there are clear parallels between our campaign for press freedom here and our opposition to the extradition of Julian Assange. They're both part of the same fight. And I would just like to add to that this fight, I think, unfortunately, will be a long one. It began 10 years ago, the fight against Julian Assange, with lies and vilification of Assange, some of which have been explained by Andrew. It then continued, and over the years we've seen what amounts to psychological and other forms of torture exercised against Assange. And then today, the ABC, and many of us knew this already, the most appalling intrusion on not only Julian Assange's privacy, but also his right to a legal defence, the same sort of legal defence that anyone else has. He's been in solitary confinement up to 23 hours a day. I think that's a little bit reduced now. But then Jeffrey Robertson said on the ABC this morning that it could be 2 years before these extradition proceedings are resolved. Perhaps in some ways obviously we're hoping he'll be released well before 2 years, but that is the fact of the threat. And then it was so chilling yesterday to read that if he does end up in the United States, he will be put in something called administrative isolation, which means he couldn't even have contact with his family. So there's a profound threat to an individual who's contributed a huge amount to our freedom, so we must continue to stand with him. Thank you very much.